Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another exciting episode of SOFREP Radio. I am the one and only, your host, Rad. That's right. You already know that because you clicked on the title. You already know who my guest is. But before I introduce you to my next guest for this awesome episode, I just want to tell you that we really appreciated seeing the spike in the merch store. Okay? Really, the fireplace is natural gas. That takes the money to keep going. So thank you for buying the merch. Okay? I also want to say that if you go to sofrep.com/book-club. That's book-club. You can check out our book club that has been designed by guys in the Special Forces community that think that you should read a book because they probably read books and maybe you should give one a chance. So go check out our book club at sofrep.com/book-club. Now, I'm going to take a moment here to introduce my next guest. I'm just going to get my thoughts about me. You guys know how I roll. And so today's guest is retired Colonel Seth D. Krummrich, and he is the former Chief of Staff of Special Operations Command Central. And I'm going to read his bio about him, and then he can say hello. So give me just a second here. Colonel Seth Krummrich graduated from Tulane University in 1994, where he received a bachelor's degree in Latin American Studies. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant through the ROTC program in 94. Colonel Krummrich was assigned to Germany, serving in the 267th Armored Battalion and 1st Cav Squadron as a platoon leader and staff officer prior to completing Special Forces training. In 1999, after completion of Special Forces Detachment Officers Qualification Course, Colonel Krummrich was assigned to Alpha Company, 2nd Battalion, 5th Special Forces Group Airborne, Operational Detachment Alpha ODA 546, where he served as detachment commander, and deployed in the initial invasion of Afghanistan in 2001. Following OEF, which stands for Operation Enduring Freedom 1, Colonel Krummrich served as the 5th Special Forces Group A Regional Survey Team Commander, serving throughout the Middle East and the Horn of Africa. In 2003, Colonel Krummrich served as an SF Branch Assignment Officer as the U.S. Army's Human Resource Command, then earned a master's degree in defense analysis from the Naval Postgraduate School in 2007. He returned to the 5th Group and deployed numerous times to Operation Iraqi Freedom. After his tours in 5th Group, he served in the National Capital Region, serving on the Joint Staff and in the Chief of Staff of the Army's Office. Colonel Krummrich commanded a battalion of the Special Warfare Center and School and served as the SWCSG-3. He was a senior military fellow at Stanford University. Most recently, he was the garrison commander at Fort Irwin, which is the National Training Center. I'm going to go over some of his awards here. Colonel Krummrich's awards and decorations include the Legion of Merit, the Bronze Star, the Defense Meritorious Service Medal with oak leaf clusters, the Meritorious Service Medal, the 5th Army Achievement Medal, the Joint Meritorious Unit Award, the Army Superior Unit Award, National Defense Service Medal, second award, the Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal, the Iraq Campaign Medal, the Afghanistan Campaign Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal, the Global Warfare on Terrorism Service Medal, the Armed Service Ribbon, the Overseas Service Ribbon, the Combat Infantryman's Badge, the CIB that everybody wants, the Ranger Tab, the Special Forces Tab, the Military Freefall Parachutist Halo, the Parachutist Badge, the Joint Staff Identification Badge, the man, the myth, the legend. That is just what is a little bit of what I've touched base with. You're probably a whole lot of other things. So welcome to the show, Seth Krummrich. Welcome.
Oh, Rad, thank you. By the way, if I could still write awards, I would give you an award for reading all of that because that was impressive. That was a great job done. It's a pleasure to be here. Look forward to talking with you, getting to know you, talking to your audience about my experiences. Yes. I think there's some interesting stories to tell. So I'm really looking forward to this meeting.
You know, prior to us going live, Seth, we were just mentioning that my dad sits on the mantle just every show, and he's a Green Beret. But something that I noticed that you being a Green Beret, Special Forces, is he had a master's in human resource and business.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
We used to say that in special operations, Green Berets get paid from the neck up. You're supposed to be a commando from the neck down, but when we go through our course, we teach not only do you get all the commando training and all of the special operations training, but we also teach you a language. You learn about culture. You are getting paid to problem solve and understand the world through soft skills as well as hard skills to be able to be that guy that we can send to the forward edge of freedom with a quarter inch of intent, a bag of money, and a bunch of guns and go make national security happen.
Yeah, really. You guys growing up in that family and that culture, dad always deployed. We kind of stayed in a foundation in my community. I kept going to the same different schools in my area. I didn't have to go to different states, different bases. Is that kind of, well, I mean, you were at a high level. You were running
I moved.
ops, bro, in and out.
I
Holy
was.
cow, dude.
I moved 15 times in my 28-year career. So
Yeah.
it was all over the place. And that doesn't count all the deployments. So it's been a nomadic journey. But look, I wouldn't change it out for anything. It was so fascinating and interesting. And when you look at your career and you look back in your life, you want it to be an adventure. You want it to be like Call of the Wild, something interesting, something that really had that Sistine Chapel divine spark to it. And that's nothing against people that don't choose this line of work, but for young people that are looking for this really interesting life, you are not going to do any better than special operations.
Right. I mean, if you really want to go after that, then you just got to put your front foot forward, go talk to your local career counselor at the Army and say, hey, how can I be like Seth?
The Seth program, which means you can make a lot of mistakes and learn the hard way, which is most of the time. But look, I had a phenomenal 28-year career, an amazing transition. And now I'm working for a great global security company, Global Guardian,
Correct.
which has been incredible. Where I'm able to take all of my experiences and then be able to apply them to clients and corporations now. It's been magnificent. But the journey was a tough one. And, look, in our conversation, I'll get a chance to kind of get in there and be really honest about what worked for me and what some of the tough points were and how I was able to make that transition. Because it's probably one of the toughest things for anybody in uniform is that step when you leave uniform. You're leaving your identity, you're leaving your tribe, and you're going into a brand new world. And it's a really tough and scary experience. But if you get the right team with you, you can absolutely knock it out of the park.
And thanks for kind of opening up a little vulnerable question there, because,
Sure.
As a young man yourself in college going through ROTC, you've kind of been groomed with, standing at attention, moving in formation. It's been indoctrinated into you, as the military does so well, into us to fight, okay, and to be in the military. And then you've gone 28 years
Sure.
in that same kind of regiment, so you yourself have to transition into a civilian life from like almost your whole life, as a young man. How old were you when you decided that, hey, I'm going in the Army? How old was that? 16?
So I was in high school, and to put things in perspective, which is a much longer story, I had been sent to a monastery in the mountains of Arkansas to get my mind right and, correct perhaps some things along the way. And there I was able to learn about ROTC. And so I got ROTC to pay for Tulane University. It's a private school. It's expensive. So I was able to go into it. And I'll be the first to admit I was doing it to pay for college, and plus being in the mountains of Arkansas in a monastery, I wanted to go to college in New Orleans, because the drinking age was 18. I could play football there, which I did for a few years, and just have a blast. But I'll tell you, Rad, some of the life skills I learned from just banging around New Orleans ended up being those life skills I needed in the Pakistani tribal area, in Iraq, talking to sheikhs, going out there, like being part of that. It wasn't necessarily the FM book. Hey, this is how you set up your machine gun. You need to know how to do all that. But that EQ, those life skills, what I learned in New Orleans really were those skills that I took with me and made a very successful career.
And so when you say FM, a lot of my listeners might think radio. What radio? No, he's talking field manual.
Yes.
Yeah. So see, there's a little bit of that integrated regiment in him where he's like acronyms, and I'm just saying the field manual. I read my dad's SF field manual from the 80s as an older man, and it still seems to make sense.
I always say, and I believe this in my line of work now with Global Guardian, that it's the outcomes that matter. Whether you are with your special forces team in Afghanistan or you're sitting down with a Fortune 100 client now, it's really the outcome that matters, right? So it's being able to take that field manual, what they're teaching you, the blocking and tackling, but apply it to some really intense and frankly dynamic situations around the world. It's one thing to see it on paper, like on the pool table. It's a whole other thing to try to execute it in the Hindu Kush or in downtown Sadr City. So it's a really interesting art. It's where science and art blend. That's when I said before that special forces guys get paid from the neck up, is being able to see that from an artist's perspective and then apply it onto the modern battlefield, which is why I love this profession, this calling so much.
Yes. Right. And again, bringing up like how the human resource element is in there. I mean, you guys are, kind of an interim politician per se, moving into, you have a satellite phone that can reach Mother Goose. It's like, oh, you need something done. I need 5 of your guys to go sit in that foxhole and face that way. Okay. With their guns. I'll call in the NyQuil for your cry baby.
That's right. No, 100%. I mean, it's being that ambassador and that warrior all in the same time, and usually on the lunatic fringe of what's going on. I mean, you are out there. You don't have your next unit sitting, 2 foxholes over. It could be a city. They could be a country away. And then when we build, really the core is our NCO teams. Our sergeants are incredible. They're selected over 2 years, and they're basically judged every day to make sure they've got the cut. But if they wear that green beret, we trust them to go to the other side of the planet and to be able to operate and make it happen with very little adult supervision. And they get it done all the time. They're frankly my spirit animals. They're amazing guys. And when I look back, I'm like, those guys are incredible. They were incredible then when I was a younger guy. They're even better now. So I'm extremely bullish on Special Forces in the way ahead for sure.
Same spirit animal. I love that. Right. I thought it was an orca whale for me, but I'm going to have to say,
it's got to be a green beret.
I love that. Yeah. An orca whale with a green beret. Can we have that? Just someone who's
it is.
I hope that makes sense to you.
For sure.
I hope that does.
No, it totally does. And these guys go out and, it's really, they'll spend an entire career, whether it's 10 years, 20 years or more, in my case. And they're exposed and going out and doing all these incredible things. And what we owe them on the backside is then being able to take care of them in their transition when they come through, to make sure that they're being taken care of when they transition into their next identity, this next opportunity in life once they're finished with their career. And that's one of the toughest things.
Similar to you, like I love my dad. Okay. I love him so much, and I'm always going to reference him. So like him, he got out of the military with a forced medical. It wasn't his choice, running marathons. Then all of a sudden he had a seizure. The medic showed up to the house, and it was his medic in Layton, Utah. We're out of Utah. And so his medic was working the EMT shift.
Oh my gosh.
So all of a sudden you hear Radel, and he shows up to my dad's house like, what's going on? And my dad was white, had a seizure, and that just started his out process for
sure.
So the medic's like, look, Jack, I have to tell him. He's like, no, I'm good. They're like, no, I have to tell him what just happened here today at your house. I have to report this. My dad's like, I'm good. Trying to stand in the doorway. Like, I'm good. Like, don't. And what happened was he had a transition. And I think there was a part of him that said that, can this keep going without me?
Yeah.
Can the team that I've been plotting on this whiteboard for the next 3 to 4 years out, can it move on without me writing on this whiteboard? And what about my kids? And he probably just had so many things, being an SF guy, just so smart, like you said, from the head up, and here his body down has just like put at 40, 41. And so he had a transition, and he started going back to his schooling, and he was working on his doctorate before he passed away. I'm just saying, he had to transition. You had to transition.
It did. Yeah.
And now you're working at Global Guardian.
For sure. I mean, look, the transition part is arguably one of the toughest things. Everything you just said about your dad resonates, and any person who's retired can absolutely give you a version of it. And here's the toughest part about it. You can get mentorship in almost anything in the military from somebody who's higher ranking than you, than someone who's been there before. But when it comes to transition in the military, your commander has not done that yet. Your command sergeant major hasn't done that yet, or their equivalent in the other services. So they don't know about it. In fact, there's a lot of policies that are in place with units that actually hurt the transitioning soldier. They'll put in something like, hey, you only have 6 months to retire. I'm here to tell you that's not the case. Like, you can't do it responsibly in 6 months. And while there's a lot of organizations out there that try to help and assist you with it, it's still a very personal experience. You've got to be able to do it. So if you've picked up, all of the trauma and all of your experiences are building up in you. I used to call it like radiation poisoning. You go to Afghanistan, you go through combat rotations. That stress builds up with you. You can release some of it, but it's sitting in you. You go to your next deployment. You're in Puntland in Somalia. The next one, you're in Iraq. The next one, you're fighting ISIS in Syria. And it's building up and building up and building up in you. And at some point, if you don't take care of it, it's going to have a level of toxicity. And sometimes it's extremely pronounced. Sometimes it's seeping into your dreams at night, and you've got to be able to handle it when you go forward. And that level of toxicity, it could be extremely, extremely lethal if you're not careful, which is one of the reasons why I think it's so important to talk about it. I was very lucky that when I retired, I built out an 18-month plan. And even though I was the SOCCENT chief of staff at the time, so for my final 3 years, I was the chief of staff for the headquarters that was commanding and controlling special operations in the Middle East and Central Asia. So you can think about all of the, bad neighborhoods in that area I just talked about, all the problems, whether it was ISIS, Al-Qaeda, counter-Iranian influence throughout the entire region. Then, of course, the fall and collapse of Afghanistan, the thing that I had gone and done as part of Task Force Dagger in the initial entry days, to all of a sudden seeing it fall apart, everything we built, and having to deal with the trauma and the drama of that, it was just another layer. In fact, that for me was my trigger of saying, hey, look, I've got to retire, because I knew physically I was not in a good place. Even though I was working out and running a lot, I had put on weight. I knew that psychologically I was struggling with some things, and I was not in a solid spot. And if I was going to be asked then to transition and go work in a corporate environment, something had to be addressed. And that was where my journey really hit an incredible inflection point in there, where when I got to my 18-month out point and I realized I needed a change, Afghanistan had fallen, I'd seen it firsthand. And the good or the bad thing about being in that chief of staff spot was that I could see and talk to the guys in the HKI airport, Hamid Karzai International Airport, as everything was falling apart. So getting all that emotion coming in while we were building the plan, or we were watching the plan fall apart, that we had presented to the administration of, hey, this is what you need to do to be successful. They didn't follow it. And you've had this incredible vantage point to the tactical level and the strategic level. So all that's being loaded on you. In my 18-month plan out, because I tell anyone that'll listen, whether you're going to hire a veteran coming in, or you're a veteran, or you're a active duty service member that's looking at retiring, look at that 18-month plan and start to build it out. And I've done all the things that they tell you to do. Hey, go join those transition organizations, and they help for the most part. Like Honor Foundation's great, Commit's great, the SODIF, they're all good. And they help you focus on your job. But that's the problem. The issue you have to solve is, can I get a job and, continue to pay for things for my family? You're a special operations guy. You're going to get a job. But you actually have one good opportunity to fix yourself. And I don't mean to just get your VA rating and turn in the paperwork, but to actually sit down and be really honest with yourself, self-actualize, and go, hey, I've got some issues. I need to get recalibrated. It's like going to the master gunner and getting everything recalibrated on your system. I need to go sit down with professionals, have them do a full workover on me, tell me what's going on and tell me how to fix it, so that when I go out to be a executive or go back into government service or wherever your path takes you, be a writer, whatever that path takes you, that you're calibrated, you're ready. You're going to be an awesome, employee. You're going to be an awesome executive. You're going to be an awesome dad. I've got 3 kids. And look, they were part of the bill payer for a lot of the stress and a lot of the toxicity that had built up in me. And I was extremely lucky.
See, and that was a question I was going to ask is, did you manage all this with a family, right? Some guys can be lone wolves out there in the teams, and some guys, like my dad, full on family.
For sure. Well, the biggest illusion we tell ourselves in SF is I can take it. Every single special operator I've talked to, Green Beret, SEAL, PJ, you name it, anyone in JSOC, is I'm the king of compartmentalization. That's true up to a certain point. We psychologically screen people for years to make sure that they can compartmentalize. But here's what happens. You lock away all that trauma from the streets of Sadr City or Basra or Afghanistan. You lock it in a box and you throw it in the back of your mental cave. And you're like, I got it. Bring on the next one. What's my next rotation? I've got this. But what happens is when you go to sleep and in your subconscious, that box leaks and it starts to come out. And it starts to make you paranoid. Wake up at night. Oh my gosh. When I lived on MacDill Air Force Base, I lived in the safest street in the United States. And I would wake up at night and go, I need to go check all the doors. Make sure that everything's locked. No, you don't. You're on the safest street. It's being patrolled right now. Then when you add the physical aspect, just like with your father, hey, I've been ground down by endless free fall jumps or body armor or just whatever it is. Every single special operator can tell you of their aches and pains. In fact, at a certain age, that becomes one of the primary conversations. What are you doing for your back, your hip? But when you start to combine those things, you have a problem. You have a real problem because it's like storm fronts coming together. Tornadoes don't happen because of one storm. It's hot and cold air coming together. When the physical, the psychological, in some cases the cognitive, all slam into each other, it manifests itself in some very, very, very dangerous ways. And so when I was going through my process, I was lucky to be in Tampa. I was lucky that I've got good medical leadership here. And they told me about a program that I was not tracking with the VA. And it was called the PrEP program. And so what the PrEP program did was say, hey, look, if you've had a mild traumatic brain injury, which most soft guys who've been in combat operations have done it. They come from overpressure injuries, blows to your head, and not just in downrange when you're breaching doors or there's artillery going off, but all the training that you do before, all the countless flashbangs that maybe you're a little bit too quick into the room and you just learned your lesson because you're getting rocked. All of those things, those hard parachute landings, it's endless. It's thousands of reps. I was a college football player, so I'd had a lot of blows to the head already. So when you start to add it all together, I went and got a brain MRI, and it was very clear brain lesions from what they called shearing impact injuries. Somewhere along the lines, I was in Basra. I'd been knocked out by artillery at one point. These things pile up on you. But here's the kicker, and it goes to your point earlier. The guys in the teams or the guys in the units, even if you're a major or you're a lieutenant colonel, you're not on the front lines. You want to be with the tribe in the action, being there. That to you is so personal. The last thing you want to do is raise your hand and go, hey, I need help. And unfortunately, we all fall into that trap, and it's a horrible trap. If you really want to do a good service for your SEAL platoon or your ODA or your battalion, raise your hand, go get help, and then come right back. Because it's basically like re-zeroing your weapon system. You're actually much better. If you take those 3 weeks or 9 weeks off, go get reset and come back, you're going to be so much better for the organization. I didn't catch it until the end, but thank God I caught it. And there's a number of services like this. In Tampa, we have the PrEP program at the Haley VA Hospital. There's NICO up in Virginia. There's Intrepid. There's Pacer down in San Antonio. Any one of these will fit. And you can do them as a veteran retired or a veteran. If you've had a mild TBI, for example, in my particular case, that was the price of admission to get into PrEP. It's everyone's like, oh man, the PrEP program is great. I'm like, yeah, but the buy-in is really difficult because it's a lot of road miles and a lot of damage that you've had. And then when you're there, this program's amazing. They do a 3-week screening. And think of it this way. You're getting dogpiled collectively by 15 different doctors and specialists, and they're looking at you like a board meeting. So you've got your physical, think of they've got the best vestibular doctors in the world there that look at you from a physical standpoint. Hey, how is this TBI affecting his balance? Let's take a look at all of his joints, look at everything, all of his pain points. They're also sitting down talking to your psychologist, which I'll lean in on in a second, why it's so important. Your cognitive specialist, which was a huge surprise to me. And they're all sitting down and looking at you at like one case study and coming up with an organized solution. The converse is how most of us do healthcare, which is, hey, my back hurts, I go see my back specialist. But my back specialist isn't talking to my psychologist, who's not talking to my cognitive therapist. Here, they're all looking at you together. So you go through this 3-week screening program. And Red, I cannot stress this enough. I've had a couple lectures in my life that stick with me, and they'll be the last things I remember before I punch out. But there was a doctor there, Dr. Gudum, sat me down, day 2. He had pulled all my labs. He'd weighed me in, all these things. And he goes, Seth, I'm going to start this off with an extremely serious point. You will be dead in 5 to 10 years if you don't make changes now. Blew my hair back. I'm like, whoa, okay, you have my full attention. I've got 3 younger kids because I didn't get started until I was in my mid-30s. Okay.
You're still feeling young. Yeah, you're still feeling good. You're like, what?
Right. Like, this is crazy, right? Like, and if you're being honest with yourself, you're like, yeah, I know it hurts when I get out of bed in the morning, my back, my hip, my neck. I know I'm ignoring all the psychological stuff. And, I get it. But now all of a sudden you're being forced to deal with reality. This doctor talked to me for 4 straight hours, no breaks, about what the plan was, what we were going to do. And it was the physical, the psychological, and the cognitive piece. And so I said, okay, hey, let's do it. And for the physical stuff, every special operator is going to lean in on it because we do it all the time. You go see the PT. No one's ever afraid of going and seeing the PT and getting your stretches or your needling or any of the other things that they do. I will say that I think the biggest stigma out there is on the psychological side. I think to include myself, I had probably the best doctor and provider, one of the best people I've met in my life as my psychologist, but I was a terrible patient my first 2 weeks. And for the big picture, there's a 3-week inpatient screening. So I'm living at the hospital for 3 weeks. And at the end of the screening, they invited me to come back for 6 more weeks. So I spent a total of 9 weeks inpatient. Now remember, hey man, I'm the man, right? I'm the SOCCENT chief of staff. I've done all these things. I'm a Green Beret, man. When I was
Colonel,
when I was at Fort Irwin, I gave no less than like 50 speeches to the entertainment industry, to Vegas, to NASCAR. Like, I was the guy, man. I was switched on. And all of a sudden, I've got these pros breaking it down for me. And they're like, hey, man, listen. And so my psychologist, who was great, Dr. Wilbanks, she's the best. And just as a cheap plug for her, she was at Tampa at the time. She actually supports veterans out of Atlanta now. But her first 2 weeks, I didn't even learn her name because I just came in. I'm like, oh, yeah, psychology, whatever. And she's great because she's running me through all the screening. She's asking me questions, but she's also not putting up with my BS. I'm deflecting and trying to be funny and things. She's like, okay, and then would pin me down and get to it. But through a bunch of trust falls, I finally learned her name. I finally said, okay, look, I'll dip my toe in it. But to be 100% honest, I was scared. I was scared because I knew the leaking boxes. I knew the things I had to deal with. But I also knew that I was in this big transition period. If I didn't address it now, Brad, when was I going to address it? When I was a corporate executive? There's no time for that.
When it pours out of you in the middle of a breakdown and you just can't hack it.
How am I going to help my clients if I'm not completely spot on in doing it? And that's exactly what we did. We went through this prolonged exposure therapy, and it was tough. Look, I didn't quit in the Q course. I didn't quit in Ranger School, even though I got the extended version in the middle of winter in the mountains, which some people can appreciate when I say that. I turned a 72-day course into a 100-day course. You're welcome. There was a point after my first or second week that I packed up my bags, and I'm like, this is too hard. I got to go. And to give Dr. Wilbanks credit, now she's a senior resident right at this point. Like, she's not even like over the hump yet. She came in and said, dude, you got this. Like, you can do this. Like, we told you it was going to be tough. You just got to trust me. And I did. And I got to tell you, from a perspective of a guy who was the man until I got seen the facts of going, hey, man, I've got some things I got to work through. I leaned in on it and went all in. And it was hard. It was the equivalent of all the combat I had physically, except in a psychological space of working through it. But once you process it and you know how to process that stress and those things, it didn't just change my life, it saved my life. So I've become this huge John the Baptist advocate for it. In fact, I would say that, to use the biblical terms, though I probably don't get to church nearly as much as I probably should have in the past. But there's some great, there's some great comparisons. This was my road to Damascus, Saul to Paul. And she basically took me through the dark forest and got me through it. And it was brutal. It was awful. It would psychologically just spin me around for days afterwards. But we did over 100 hours of eyeball to eyeball, just like this, face to face in room during COVID, wearing masks. So we all look like bank robbers, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Though when I would break down, I should at least let me take off my mask. And look, I hadn't cried in 30 years before I went in there. Even at, plainside ceremonies and those other things, I was just packing it all down. And then I finally got a chance to work through it. And so she was so fundamental in being able to get it done. So I tell any veteran that's feeling that, like they feel disassociated from their lives, from what's going on, like you've got to go find, your version of Dr. Wilbanks out there. It doesn't have to be psychology. It can be a friend. It can be, whatever your outlet is, just, you got to be able to just find that one to do it. I was just very lucky to find the world's best who really committed to help me, even though I fought her tooth and nail the entire way.
And you seem like you're just ready to go right back into war. You're like, you know what? I think I'm just going to pack my bags up here and go get shot at, or maybe die over there because that's easier for me. I could just go through the mechanics of that, but mentally you have to now become, again, I say vulnerable, right? And I like to use that with
fragile. I mean, again, Green Beret Colonel, finally the badge of the school I hadn't done, right? Like, again, it was like, put a quarter in me, and I'll tell you a war story. Most of it's true. Right. As soft guys will appreciate. There I was, right? Except unless it was an actual combat experience, and then we don't talk about those, right? And that was the thing I found. The interesting or the funny or the self-deprecating ones, man, you give me some beer and bourbon all day long, twice on Sunday. But the ones that were really holding me down were the ones that I shared with her and her alone. I don't think I'll tell another human being, but just being able to process it was so important for me. And the way I like to think of it is if I was involved in hundreds of combat operations and there were nails, they were all nailed into the board. There was 3 or 4 nails that just stuck up, and they were the ones that were sneaking into my subconscious, haunting my dreams, making me, feel very awkward or scared in certain situations that I shouldn't have been with my family out and about. So when you go through that, it's really important to see it. And at the end of it, when I go through the psychological piece, the physical piece, because the docs and the physical side were amazing when it came to getting my vestibular right. The cognitive piece, which was incredible. Sharon Hare is one of the great specialists. She actually helped start the program. She sat me down once and goes, okay, look, I'm a speech therapist. I'm like, I give speeches all the time. I'm like, I'll crush this.
Right. What do you need? You want me to tell you what's up?
And she was cool about it. She goes, listen, I'm just going to give you a couple tests and we'll see how you do. I'm like, right on, bring it on. And she gave me the first one. She read me a couple paragraphs and said, hey, how many times did you hear the word the? And I said, 3 times. And she goes, cool, there was 22. And I'm like, whoa. And so there was this mystery. Like, I knew the physical piece. I knew the psychological piece.
3 times.
Yeah. And then I had another grinder with Sharon, and she was just one of these other people. So the reason I bring all this up and I share the story is at the end of this 9 weeks, I came out physically, psychologically, cognitively recalibrated. So when people talk about transition, they're like, hey, I'm leaving the service. I got to get a job. So they're going in all these job interviews and things. They're trying to get their retirement party set up. They're trying to make sure their jump log's okay. And they're all worried about the wrong things. What they need to do is recognize the opportunity they have, find that team, what prep was for me, find it for them, get right. Because when you come out and you're recalibrated, man, you're going to be awesome. I'm such a better, I'd say father, employee, human being, friend, like because of this program. And then when I went into work for Global Guardian, which has been amazing. So Global Guardian takes the Green Beret model where we have indigenous teams over 140 countries. And then they're in place. Most of them are in the Ministry of Interior. They're licensed to carry firearms, drive armored vehicles. They speak the language, know the culture because 99% of your problems are local, wherever you are in the world. And if you don't speak the language and know the neighborhood culture, you're going to get yourself in trouble. So that when our executives or our families travel around the world, they've got that, Lawrence of Arabia waiting for them at the airport. That is a Pakistani, he's Indian, he's Brazilian. They're ready to greet them and to make sure everything's going to go perfectly fine. So if you're there for corporate work or you're there on vacation, we are all there. We're watching them on tracking apps. And I always like to tell people, like, everyone's got tracking apps. I track my kids on Life 360 all the time, but we're one of the only companies around the world that if you get in trouble and you hit the panic button or you call the op center, I'm going to have somebody there in minutes that's going to be able to come solve your problem, which has been great. So I was able to take all that Green Beret experience, get right with myself in prep, and then get that job of my dreams, which I love it. I love my clients because they joined, because in a lot of cases, I convinced them to join, think like business development or sales. And now I manage them. And it's been absolutely phenomenal. They trusted me to come on and do it. And so I've been able to get in there and take all my hard lessons learned from the Pakistani travel area and Sadr City and all the places in between and help those executives now be able to excel wherever they go. It's just been fantastic.
It just reminds me of having, you said, the guy just standing out there waiting for you, Indian, blends in, speaks the language. It reminds me of Indiana Jones. He's like, you'll never find him. He speaks 1,000 languages. He'll blend in with the environment. He's like, hello, hello.
With his
Does anybody know?
Yeah, you're sitting. You're right. You're sitting in Cameroon, going, "Why does that guy have a whip on him? Nobody carries a whip in Cameroon. Who is this guy? Like, this is ridiculous."
Yeah, dude.
And you realize it because in Green Berets, like, we built the Iraqi Special Operation Force between
Correct.
5th Special Forces Group and 10th Group. You've seen it from guys writing books and other things. And while they were awesome while we were there, I tell people all the time their greatest moment, and it makes me emotional when I think about it too. We built this exquisite commando high-end unit. And after we left in 2010 and the rise of ISIS exploded there,
Right.
that unit stood at the gates of Baghdad and kept the barbarians out at a 75 to 80% casualty rate. That thing that we built, they were shopkeepers, they were college students, they were just dudes on the street. We built this incredible thing in Green Berets because we understood the power of the indigenous guys and how you empower them because outcomes matter. They will get you the outcome that you need. And they were incredible. They were incredible with us. They were incredible without us, and they continue to get after it today. They just took out a bunch of ISIS guys not too long ago. And you look at that legacy, and then you take a look at it and go, all right, I'm retiring from the military. There's this incredible place, Global Guardian, that was built on that because our founder, Dale Buckner, was a Green Beret. And his
yeah, exactly. I was going to bring him up.
He's phenomenal, and his chief operating officer is CIA. So we're all, that soft CIA mix that comes together is empowering this network. And now, I'll just list a couple companies that allow us to talk about them. Like Hilton Hotels now has this network, for example. Hess Oil has this thing.
Sure.
So you start to look at this, and you're like, man, who would not want this Lamborghini? It's incredible. And it's been great. And the people I work with there are great. And I'm also one of those guys, even though I'm an older guy at this point, I'm very bullish on the millennials and on the Gen Z guys. The 20 and 30-year-olds that work at our company are phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Sharp, bright. They manage crises around the world. Rad, we were pulling dudes out of Khartoum within a couple hours after it exploded 11 months ago. We've pulled over 1,100 dudes out of it, clients.
I got you. No, dudes is good, sir. Dude, sir. No, it's okay. No, it's okay.
Out of Israel after October 7th, within 6 hours when the Russians came across the Ukrainian border, we were moving thousands of clients out of harm's way. We moved over 10,000 clients out of Ukraine since then. I'm passionate about it because I love my clients. They're awesome folks. And I know it works. And the reason I know it works is because I lived it for 28 years as a Green Beret. So when I talk to folks that are getting ready to retire or looking at it, I'm like, listen, here's the good news. Number one, you're going to get a job. Go to the Honor Foundation. They're great. Go to Commit and sort of get a framework. Number one thing is take care of you. Go find that team to fix you, because when you come out on the other side, guys like me are going to guide you to that place you want to be. But here's the flip side of that coin. You don't fix yourself. You're carrying that baggage, that toxicity we were talking about. Now you're trying to help the clients. Now you're trying to, deal with things. It's tough. And look, sometimes the nation asks you to do things after you retire. I'm working at Global Guardian. Things are great. I'm loving it. I'm bringing on clients. I'm building out, the network. I'm solving problems. And I've got to go testify in front of Congress, Foreign Affairs Committee on the fall of Afghanistan. Because I had mentioned before, I had this exquisite seat to talk to the guys in HKI at the airfield, and then also see the plan that General McKenzie, the CENTCOM commander, had presented to the Joint Chiefs, the SecDef, and the president, which, they didn't go with. So, I got this incredible.
Which president was that? Can you, because I know Trump signed the accord in 2020 or December 22nd, he signed it saying pull out, right? After he had sold like 85 billion in assets.
Of course.
So are we talking about him or Biden within a small amount of time?
It's a great question, Rad, because I think context really matters. You can get caught up in, just like the debates the other night. It's really easy to try to pin the tail on the donkey. The reality is the tail fits on every single one of the presidents and every single one of us. And you've got to own and take responsibility for it. Here's what I mean by it. Every administration that touched Afghanistan is a stakeholder in its failure, period, full stop. Everybody is. You can go back and take a look at any single one of them, and go, okay, I see. And part of it too is you see the vacillation between the different takes that the administrations took. Some people focused on it. Some it became a backwater, and they let it go over time. There wasn't a consistent strategy that was there. Now, I will say it, and I stand by my testimony that was there, that the final administration, the Biden administration, which has done a lot of good things out there. So I don't want to make it paint it like it's, I'm on one side or the other, because I'm not. I'm truly a centrist when it comes to it, but that's a whole different conversation, which means both sides hate me.
Yeah, same. I'm like, I'm poking the bear. That's me.
Right. But I will be very upfront and honest with the truth. And what I told him was the truth. It was, hey, the stakeholder that chose the when and the how we left, which was the Biden administration, owns the responsibility. There's no reason that we should have left in the beginning, in the middle of the fighting season. That's crazy. We've been in Afghanistan way too long to know that a pullout when the Taliban are at their strength, that's nuts, right? Like that's a bad idea. Hey, you spent all this time there. This whole concept of, well, we don't want to lose any more people or spending more money there. Number one, the casualty rate had dropped to just about zero. If you compared Afghanistan to training accidents that were going on in the United States, to include at the National Training Center, when I was there as a commander, Afghanistan was extremely low. But you trade off what we lost, which we warned everybody. We warned the Trump administration. We warned the Biden administration. And we, being the military side, was, hey, if you don't leave
the U.S. on your name tape.
Correct. And what we said was, look, if you don't leave that special operations picket line, the same thing that was there in 2001 and 2 that I was a part of, if you don't leave that picket line, to just buy more time and space so that the institutions in Afghanistan can just get a little bit more time. And, oh, by the way, so they're not immediately pressured after we left, that just do it. I'm not saying the outcome would have changed, but the way it was done was horrible, because here was the problem. We had given the Afghani people hope, specifically the Afghani women hope.
Yeah.
And when they got thrown away, the reality is this: Afghan women pay the bill for our feckless decision-making every minute of the day. We've been talking for 42 minutes. There's been every single minute of those, an Afghan woman's been abused in this oppressive system that we let happen. I mean, it looks like September 10th, 2001. So it's really hard to say that, to really justify our time there when we basically, threw it away. There were warnings in place. We told them. And there were decisions to go the other direction. And it was really unfortunate. There's a great documentary called Retrograde. It's on, I think, National Geographic. It's phenomenal. There was this National Geographic team that was embedded with an ODA in Afghanistan when the news came down, hey, you're pulling out, and you're pulling out like now. So you have to tell this commando unit you're with, that we'd been with for a decade plus, oh, we're leaving. And by the way, we're leaving and not coming back. You're on your own out here at the lunatic fringe of Taliban land. We're not coming back. And by the way, we're leaving in like 2 weeks. Like, we're not bringing the printer back or the fridge back. We're going to either destroy it or we're going to leave it for you. And you watch the look on the Afghan commandos' faces. It was that shock of capture that we call in survival school when you first get grabbed and you're going to the prison situation. You got to survive shock. They were so shocked that there was no time and space to let them sort of recover, pull themselves together. Because the second we started going, it's the fighting season. Here comes the swarm. Here comes what I described in my testimony as the big red blob. Because as I would watch this map in Afghanistan, or the Afghan map from the operations center in Tampa, every day, it was like this giant big red blob was just eating and gobbling up more terrain as it moved its way towards Kabul and Kandahar. And it was so clear early on that, hey, man, that's not going to stop. I'd seen this for way too long for us to see that this is going. It was like, have you ever seen the movie Aliens? And they're looking down at the thing. They're trying to find the aliens. And they're like, hey, they're 10 meters away. They're 6 meters away. Like, where? I can't see them.
Where is it? Yeah.
Right. It's there. It's like, it's on you. And once you're on you, there's nothing that you're going to be able to do. There basically was a tipping point where it was unrecoverable. Then the panic started. And, the testimony stands alone. And I won't go through all the details of it. But I will tell you this. It was extremely powerful and painful for me to have to go do it. I'm proud of it because I took the oath to the Constitution, and Congress is the embodiment of it. So I did my duty after I was retired, told them the truth as I saw it, witnessed it, and experienced it. And the only reason I was able to do that, really powerful, painful experience, then turn around, hop in an Uber, and go back to my headquarters and go on client calls, was because of prep, because of folks like Dr. Will Banks, because of that team had built the resiliency and given me the tools to be able to handle it afterwards. That's why I've had such great success at this wonderful company, was because of that transition, why it's so important to understand why you've got to invest in yourself during that transition piece. Stop worrying about being a consultant or sales or going back to the government. Take this opportunity to fix yourself. I'm obviously huge advocate.
Or becoming a cop. I see a lot, it's like I got out of the military. What do I do? Well, you go become a cop. And then what happens is they get back into the multicam. They get back into a decommissioned MRAP that's been painted black with a tan sole. Okay.
Right.
And all of a sudden they're like, oh, I know how to work a 40 millimeter. How come you guys have this in the police department? And next thing you know, you have this blended, are they cops or not, on network TV, because, the multicam doesn't help, right? Because in the beginning of the Army picking the pattern, they discarded it and went with ACU gray square digital and said, no, we'll let multicam become a civilian pattern. And so the law enforcement's like, we'll use it. So now you got law enforcement wearing multicam, you got Army National Guard wearing multicam, and then you have, a lot of commotion, let's just say, during the end of like Trump's presidency, where they were all over the nation, and you're like, who's the cop, who's the military?
For sure.
It's just such a blended environment with this multicam, and trying to, I don't know. I mean, you get, like I said, you get an old salty veteran who hasn't gone through deprogramming or how to recompartmentalize what he's going through. And he gets all that gear right back.
Yeah. It can end really poorly. You reminded me of the fact that we always joke that when you had the gray pattern uniform, it was perfect camouflage for a gravel parking lot. It was fantastic. So in the motor pools in Iraq, it was fantastic.
On the tarmac.
Right. Once you were
the whole what's the point? They were like, you have to go against the wall and get dirt on it to make it blend in. That was like the analogy of it.
Yeah. Oh, it would be a lot funnier if it wasn't such an issue. But it really comes to like everybody's different and what you can take. Everyone can absorb a different amount of stress and pressure. We recruit in special operations people that can take that. But we fill that bottle over time, to use the old analogy on it. And once your bottle's full, if you don't have somebody to help you, process everything that's in there, it can become very dangerous, whether it's in your next profession or just for you personally. The one topic that's very near and dear to me that I'm more confused now than I was 30 years ago, is suicides. The more I touched it, the more I saw it, the less I realized I understood and more empathetic I was for everyone that was touched by it. And that's why I try to really advocate for self-actualization, self-care, because when I came out of that prep program, I had lost 70 pounds. But it was nothing compared to my psychological piece of being able to truly process things and be clean and clear, and then be able to operate brand new, like I was born again in a new world environment, pick up corporate ease and everything that comes with it. And it's been wonderful, but that's the opportunity of that transition time. Because if you don't, things can happen. And sometimes it's just minor and your family's the bill payer for it. Sometimes it can be much more impactful. It can end really poorly. So, it's one of those things I encourage anyone listening, whether you're a veteran, whether you're going to be a veteran, or whether you're just there and you're interested and you want to help, reach out, find those places, help people connect up. Because if you send them and invest in them that way, you're going to get one hell of an employee coming out in the back end. I mean, one hell of an employee. And you're crazy if you don't hire them. Absolutely.
It's true.
Absolutely.
And Global Guardian, let me just put this out there. If somebody is out listening to our show right now, like, hey, Colonel made a lot of points, Rad made a lot of points, I think I might hit up Global Guardian. You guys are always looking for somebody that might fit that resume on your website.
100%. Right? Look, absolutely. Go to our website. We are always looking for talent. Like I said, that talent in those 20 to 30-year-old ranks is incredible. But then you get some guys like myself, and where I become really important for the clients. When I sit down, when I sign a client, I stay with the client as their security expert. So if you're that big corporation, you get all of my experience. And I'm usually talking to somebody that looks just like me, another guy, and that has a full, FBI, Secret Service, military background. So we've chewed a lot of the same dirt. So we've got peers talking about how we're going to problem solve, how we're going to take our model of having all those teams, that worldwide global medevac. I can get your person out of harm's way or from a hospital in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
I can pick them up in a couple hours. They're ready to go, grab them and have them back in Houston, ready to go in under a day or two. Right? Just depending on flight time. Like that's really cool to come in that because you leave that value proposition of I'm serving my country and doing this to, hey, I've got these clients I really like because they signed on because they liked me enough to do it. Now I get to solve problems for them all the time, regardless of what they are, medical, security wise, cyber, digital, they're getting stalked online. I can do all those things.
So to just like kind of pitch you a little bit here, because I'm not trying to make this a commercial, but who is your client for Skydio, or excuse me, Global Guardian? And at Global Guardian, what's that client look like? Who would want to reach out to you? Who are you looking for? You said Hilton Hotel. You kind of let that out there. Is that something?
No, it's a great question. So I've got this entire portfolio of, whether it's Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies. I also have NGOs. And this is a big one too. If you're an NGO that travels to Somalia, Libya, some of these tough places, South Sudan, like you need a Global Guardian because we've got the tracking platform where we can track you in real time, send you alerts. And if you get into trouble, I can have somebody there for you in minutes. Or if you're rural, like in rural Cameroon, in hours, depending on how long it takes to get there. But we're frankly the only company that operates in level 4 conflict and war zones, and that can come help you right now. Ukraine, man, we are postured everywhere. We do incredible work. Gaza, West Bank, anywhere else in Israel, we've got Palestinian teams, we've got Israeli teams, we've got Lebanese teams. In Lebanon, for example, we have the biggest security force outside of their armed forces. That's where our clients that are there are able to get. So we can come get you, evacuate you, get you out of the country, whether it's medical or just an emergency. And that's why this job's awesome, right? You take all those skills and then you're able to do it for your clients around the world.
So cool.
It's the best.
It's cool. I'm just going to say that's so cool, even though the situation might be a nightmare at the time, right? Like
for sure. Well, in all 50 states too. Right. So if you have a hostile termination that's going on in Minneapolis or Salt Lake City or wherever, hey, Seth, I got a problem here. Can you get somebody over here? Armed guard will show up, but it's not just some big burly dude. It's like, all right, what do you want him to look like? Hey, I want him to wear this because it's going to look just like our HR team. He's going to blend. He'll blend in. It's non-contentious. He's there to help. He's there to de-escalate. And so be able to get, take care of the company. They're feeling confident. The head of HR is feeling confident. The person who's being terminated, who's, showed a pattern of aggressive behavior, is not feeling, aggravated now because there's some big guy there. And it's really a great way to do it. And then for corporate leaders that fly around the world or families, you want to have that executive protection agent meet you at the airport, or the expediter that gets you through customs meets our agent right there, who is like, hey, I am Zamir in Pakistan. It's great to meet you. Hey, we're heading out. This is what we're going to go do. We're tracking you back from Tyson's Corner, making sure that everything's going well. We're talking on WhatsApp, Signal. And if anything happens, there's a protest, there's a natural disaster, there's a terrorist attack, you immediately get the alert on your phone, and we're immediately sending security teams in to help. And it happens like that. I'm a 7-day-of-the-week guy. I'll be the first to admit that it's my juice. All right. One of the things I figured out in my prep program was, hey, what I need to be successful is a job that's dynamic. It's always changing. I need to be switched on. Like that's
got to be going.
Yeah, I love it. I do. And I think there's a lot of soft guys that's it. And conversely, I think there's some guys that hit retirement and they need that, but they don't have that in their job. Like they're missing it in some way. And that's where it can turn into something else. So for Global Guardian,
retirement's changed, Colonel, because now you can run for president at 78 years old. It's like you may have retired at 60. You still
sounds
got
awful.
18 years to rerun again. It's like, I'm just saying, man, like you people, the day, and also these 20s and 30-year-olds that you're praising, they're also the 20 and 30-year-olds who are fending in Ukraine right now.
Oh,
right. Because
amazing.
I mean, that's who's in these trenches, and you're sitting there dotted all over that map. You have to know it's a 20-year-old who comes up with certain, wow, that's a good idea.
Let me tell you, in my experience, I have seen in the dawn of social media, I learned more from listening as a 40-year-old commander or chief of staff or whatever. I learned more from turning around and asking a 27-year-old staff sergeant how he would solve a problem than I did trying to, get guys that were my age to come up with it. Because he would say, hey, listen, why don't we just send him a signal note? What? Oh, okay. He's in Raqqa. All right. Well, let's figure out like it's just things like that. You're like, oh man, that's a great idea, actually. And you look at Ukraine now, the dirt laboratory of Ukraine. You see World War I trench warfare meets science fiction, Philip K. Dick, a borderline AI, drone warfare, all of these things happening in real time. And right to your point, Rad, it's all being driven by those young creative minds that grew up in this creative incubator of social media. The same things that people beat up these generations on are
Call of Duty,
The value of what they're able to do and problem solve is phenomenal. That's why as long as we don't screw up the future with a nuclear war or any of these other things, I am so optimistic about where we're going because of the talent. And look, they have a lot of roadblocks in their way. The economy was not good to the millennials. All the things with housing, all these other challenges.
Right.
Despite all of those horrible things that have been thrown at them that they've been able to overcome or are still fighting through now, I am still wildly optimistic on what the future looks like and what we're going to be able to do.
Me too.
Me too. As long as, government doesn't overstep and creative minds are allowed to run, as
long as it doesn't show up here on our shores, it'll be too late. If the war comes here, if we don't try to fend this,
I'm in Tampa, Florida. God rest the soul of any poor foreign country that tries to land in Florida.
I tell you what, bro, don't come, don't do it.
There's a bunch of people in Florida that are praying for that day. Give me my Red Dawn.
They're defending their property, bro.
I want my Red Dawn. Bring it. Let's do it. Right.
Red Dawn. Yeah. You know it.
Look, it's part of that American spirit, right? That separates us. It's truly
like what we're saying right now.
Well, it's this idea of not necessarily manifest destiny. Like we're definitely designed to go do this, but it's this, hey, I'm not constrained by a caste system. I'm not constrained by, family dynamics necessarily. I can expand and grow. And that evolution is going to be messy. It's going to piss people off. It's going to be fits and starts, and not everyone's going to get along. Democracy is really messy. We see it, the debates and how divided people are. All that said, that's not necessarily unhealthy. Here's what unhealthy looks like. You go to country X in the Middle East, and you say something against the king or the crown prince or whatever, and you get yourself thrown in jail or worse, killed because you had an alternate opinion. Look, that's not what you want. It's okay to do it. It should not manifest itself in violence. This is not French Revolution time. I've been in revolutions and civil wars. I've seen them happen firsthand. I've had to be in them. America's not at that point. People are out of their mind saying that, we're going to have a revolution. Okay, really? Yeah. So walk out in your street and tell me who's the Democrat and the Republican.
Tell me. What do you? Yeah, exactly. Stop. I say the same type of stuff to folks. I'm like,
people lose their mind on it. They get confused in it. And they have to just stop, take a step back and go, okay, let me process what I'm feeling right now. Work through what's real and what's nonsense, right?
Yes.
Learn this again. Shout out Dr. Wilbanks there. And then be able to come up with something that resonates with me and my value systems. Hey, look, I retired. When I retired from the military, I had a couple more years I could have served. I retired because I realized that my values had just fallen out of line with where the rest of the military was going with Afghanistan administration. That was okay. There was nothing personal about that when I really sat down and deconstructed it. Mm-hmm. It was just, hey, if that's the case and I'm out of congruence, I'm the guy who has to leave. Right. Okay, no problem. And I champion the military to this day. I'm their number one fan and advocate, and I believe in them. But at a personal level, it's okay to step away if it's just not in line with you anymore.
Mattis did it for that exact reason. Mattis is like, hey, you're going to pull us out of Syria. You're going to leave me with my Peshmerga and all the YPG just to
just in the breeze,
Kurds
in the breeze.
Yeah. So he's like, you know what? We don't align.
Yeah,
you need someone else that can. Yeah. So he did that. And a lot of people, I give him credit for stepping up and saying, I'm just not this guy.
There was a powerful moment for me when I was testifying, and I'll remember it to my dying day. because I didn't know they were going to be there. But sitting right behind me were Gold Star family members from Abbey Gate. So I'm testifying on how everything felt. And I remember, and thank God I had gone through this processing process, so I was able to handle sort of negative things.
Visualization.
Yeah. And somebody asked me, hey, certain people had said they had no regrets about how Afghanistan ended. And I got to tell you, it was everything I could do to be like, process. All right, I need to be very responsible about how I, answer this. But how do you not have regrets, right? Hey, because there's two main bill payers here. There's really three. There's the Gold Star families who have to live with this loss for the rest of their life, which is correct. I can't wrap my mind around it, do anything for them. There's the wounded in action that have a lifetime of care that we owe them, and it has to be high quality care. And I saw high quality care in the VA. I know they get maligned in certain circles, and sometimes absolutely they should. But my experience has been very positive. But we owe them that. And then there's, frankly, in my opinion, the women of Afghanistan, which haunts me to this day. They can't be forgotten. You can't tell me, that you care about women's rights and things unless they happen to be in the borders of this country where they can't walk outside without anything completely covering them.
Seriously.
They're not allowed to talk outside. They can't go to school after 5th grade. Saddest thing in the world that you'll see. Second saddest.
It's the word. And the thing is like they'll take the teacher that might be female teaching them and then shoot her in front of the students.
Of course.
Okay. Because I saw that. I saw footage of that. And it was just the worst thing that these young women, my favorite Don't Tread on Me flag has the fallopian tubes on it.
Yeah. Right. No, 100%.
Okay. Have you seen that? It looks like the rattlesnake. For sure. Don't tread on me.
And the worst part is I understand the financial thing. And look, there is a logic. If you were to look at this from a cold logic perspective, that absolutely resonates. When we were in Afghanistan, it was great for everybody in the region except for us because we had to fight. And when I say we, I mean the coalition. NATO was awesome with the representation. It was us. It was all of our allies. All the jihadis came to fight us. It was their Super Bowl. That's where they were coming. Now, before we showed up, they were blowing up theaters in Moscow. They were fighting in Chechnya. They were doing all these things. They were just metastasizing outside the borders. We show up for 20 years. We pull in all of the fighting is happening with us. So the one thing when I saw the Ayatollah looking very smug after we left and we had the disaster at HKI, we were leaving, and I heard China and Russia all sitting back and chuckling. I'm like, I don't know what you're laughing at, man, because you just ate a huge problem that's coming your way. And since we've left that terrorist incubator of Afghanistan, which my kids are now going to have to go fight at some point, that is now, guess what? Attacking theaters in Moscow, blowing up synagogues. They have come out multiple times and said they look forward to marching down the streets of Tehran with the ISIS flag. Like, guys, you are missing
what's the odds
the
of
point.
China and Russia trying to come back together to attack Afghanistan? And now that Afghanistan's fully loaded.
Hey, and they share borders with them. And guess what? Yeah. It's a lot easier to drive across the border and do nonsense and nefarious activities in China and Russia. The way, China, you treated the Uyghurs, don't think that was lost on anyone in Afghanistan. Like, you are going to pay for this now. So I understand that logic. But this is about moral responsibility. And this is me personally, right? I'm not speaking for the government. I'm not speaking for anybody else, just me.
Right.
I just couldn't get past the fact that we created this bubble of hope in a place that was the most hopeless place on the planet. More hopeless than Haiti. I mean, it was hopeless. We gave them hope for 20 years, and then one day, flip the lights off and
it's gone.
And
why did he sign that agreement? Why did he make that happen? And I'm blaming Trump on that.
It's all of them. He
even said, I want to leave a mess.
Well, look, all I can say is I can't.
He did say that. He said, I want to leave a disaster for the incoming guy. And why did he want to have the Taliban at the White House and at Camp David? Like, what was that about? And so again, he sold $85 billion in equipment to them and then pulled out on December 22nd before Christmas when a new president, who he was still saying he was the president, fighting over this, the ballots and everything, who's the real president. And Biden obviously has come in and taken over. So it's like, how does he get to just not get the fault for that? Plus, I learned that Bagram was a Russian base anyways.
So all of those, here's what I tell you.
Please.
Every administration that touched it, the lack of strategy, the lack of coherent campaign
focus. He specifically pulled us out, Seth. He specifically signed it Yeah.
So just to answer the question on it.
Yeah.
So the Doha agreements absolutely are put into place. Now, there were 7 main tenets with them, of which the Taliban was not holding up their end of the bargain. So when we got to December, and he was like, and the President Trump said, hey, let's get to 0. And again, I'm not defending President Trump. I'm just telling you what happened.
Yeah, no, I just want to know.
The military went in there and said, General Milley, who I'd worked with before as a 1-star, stand-up guy, put in an impossible situation. Yeah, absolutely. He went in there and said, hey, if this happens, the entire thing collapses. And this is what's going to happen. You've got to leave a certain, what I call the special operations picket line. Looks a lot like 2001, where you've got Green Berets and SEALs out there assisting combat advisor work with those units that we built. And the idea there is not that you're going to crush the Taliban, which keeps regenerating in Pakistan, but it's to really just buy space and time to get government services and get government support structures and institutions, try to get them codified, which, by the way, this is like dodgeball. If you can do it in Afghanistan, you can do it anywhere. But the thing is, it was not coming together because of the corruption and things. So I'm not saying it would have changed over time, but we didn't get a chance to try it because what happened was the President Trump said, okay, look, we're not going to pull down to 0 then. I'm going to leave it for the next administration to fill out or to figure it out. And there was a lot of Pollyannish thinking that happened in the next 6 months, which was things like, hey, well, we're going to be able to just fall back and hold the HKI airfield and the U.S. Embassy, call it the island. Afghanistan can do the rest of it, and we're going to just operate out of there. Everyone on our side of the fence was like, no, that's not going to work. General McKenzie went in there and told them, hey, look, you need to have this. And they didn't take that piece of advice. So to your point, before, there's multiple people that own this. I
agree.
So the majority stakeholder, and we can agree to disagree on it, but it's not going to change anything. You know what I mean? Like at this point.
Well, he did literally did he have to even do that? Couldn't he have just let the next administration? Because what I find to be kind of the problem here, and you can answer this or not, is the transfer of the situation. Okay, so like access to I've interviewed people who transitioned Obama from Bush, and he said, Rad, I created 38 things that were so important that the president had to look at. And when I transitioned, it was not anything about Republican or Democrat. It was, here's what's going on with the U.S., and this is what you need to focus on, this binder. Why did that binder never get to Biden to be able to start to work on it? Because I lived through it. I watched it. We saw it on TV. It was like,
if you've ever spent time in D.C., one of the things I always said is I love D.C. as a city, but everybody you run into there is the most important person. Just ask them, they'll tell you.
Sure.
It is awash with hubris, arrogance. When you get elected into office, the sense I always got there was sort of this moral mandate of you elected me in here on the things that I said I was going to do, so I'm going to go do them now, without maybe just taking a beat and listening and just going, hey, maybe the timing of this is off. Hey, maybe we just push this 6 months to the right. Now, realize we're talking about maybes, right? So it doesn't really matter.
Because it's already happened.
Because it's done, right?
Yes.
I wish it wouldn't have gone that way. And really, the real value of this conversation now is not necessarily even the blame. Mm-hmm. It would be nice if somebody from any of the administrations would take a little bit of accountability besides, active duty service members who've done a pretty good job of it. Just somebody on the political side, that'd be nice. I don't care which. Just somebody do it.
Somebody, yes.
But the real thing is, are we going to be able to distill any lessons learned? Post-Vietnam, there was a lot of work that was done to capture, hey, how did this fail? General McMaster had written this great book on exactly dereliction of duty, and exactly why that happened and how we got there. If we can get past our political blinders, if we can get past the vitriol, the hubris of our own position, and truly self-actualize and look at this factually, which is my point, because I don't blame at this point is somewhat, it's just not helpful. It's, hey, what can we take away so we don't do this again? Is there any sort of guardrail we can put into place? What's the real value of this now? Politics is politics. I mean, the debate, you'd hope that they would just lay out what they were planning on doing going forward, and all they did was fight with each other. And presidents don't even do debates for a job. So I've always been fascinated why we do debates in the first place, but whatever. But show me what the path forward is, and let us Americans are extremely intelligent. Let us make the choice that fits our value system, right? Hey, when I was out of congruence, I chose because of my values to step away. Some of my peers did. Some of my peers kept going. And God bless them for doing it, right? Because they've
all done this.
Right. And thank God, right? This is a choose your own adventure, and you're on your own.
Right. And you're a volunteer army. Okay. It's volunteer.
You can volunteer in, you can volunteer out.
Volunteer out. Okay.
Right.
It's a thing, right? We're not conscripted just yet.
Right. And it's okay. Right. So when I look at something like Afghanistan, my takeaway is this. It's, get the truth out if you're asked. Like, I was asked to come testify, so I did. I was able to do it because in my transition, I was able to get correct with, this great prep program and wonderful doctors. And then
Dr. Will
Banks out of Atlanta, Sharon Hare out of Tampa, Doc Merritt out of Tampa.
Dr.
Awesome.
Will Banks.
Yeah. If you do that, then when you go to Global Guardian, man, you will knock it out of the park for every single one of your customers. Family, corporate, you're on it. You're ready to go. Because if you can handle that, and you can go testify and you can just be honest with the truth. Well, you're going to be honest with the truth too with your clients of, hey, this is what I think you need to do and this is how I can help you do it. And then that becomes such a valuable commodity for any corporation or any family that's traveling because the world's only getting more dynamic. You look at all the elections this year and how many countries are flipping from democratic over to something other. It's scary. You look at the rise of BRICS. It's equal to NATO.
Germany, right? Germany just went back to like East Germany.
It's wild, right? So, and somewhere in there, the engine that runs America and the world are corporations. It's the economy. We have to protect that. So I see that as an extension of what I did before, of making sure that my clients can have business continuity around the world, that my clients can take care of their families whenever they're traveling. And I love it. Rad, I absolutely love it. I find tons of meaning and value in it. I see myself as I'm one of those guys that took bumps and made a ton of mistakes along the way, but was very lucky to find this path that got me reset, enjoyed a wonderful, fun, adventurous, amazing ups and downs career, was able to get reset and then find this amazing company that nothing against any of our competitors, because they're awesome, awesome folks too.
They all have the mind of what you want to do too.
But they just use a different model. And our model is just so wildly different from what everybody else has, because they weren't Green Berets. They were selling software before they decided to sell security. They didn't understand that when you live with Iraqi soldiers, how incredibly awesome they are at their job and what they can do for your corporate clients, 2 decades later. And it's great. And
I know.
And now our clients get to enjoy that, and they get to drive the Lamborghini all the time, and it's fantastic.
That's awesome. I love it. And look, I could probably keep talking to you all
Anytime.
day long, and as a friend, as someone who's in the know like this, and I just want to extend my gratitude to you, as the son of the Green Beret, as someone who didn't know what it took until he had to go in himself to realize that Green Beret's just not on every head. Okay. Try living around an Air Force base and going up to it with your dad and like, how come he's got a trucker hat on, Dad? He's like, just keep coming with me. He literally just pulled me in.
Don't make eye contact. Just keep going.
Yeah, just don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I was like, oh, Dad's Army, Air Force Base. But, I love all of you out there that have served and raised your hand in a 90-degree fashion to free the oppressed, for freedom of choice and to have freedom to be yourself. And if you want to get a tattoo, that's your choice to get a tattoo. But don't put your tattoo on me. Let me choose it.
We're 100% aligned, Rad. I got to tell you, 100%. And look, thank you for the opportunity to come in and tell my story today, my great career transition and how, the space that Global Guardian is working in. And look, anytime you want to deep dive something, it can be Afghanistan, it can be Libya, it can be any one of the things that I've touched out there. Feel free to call. I feel the Sistine Chapel divine spark in talking to you, and I agree. We could talk forever. So,
it's really, I just want it to be like that. And I want to show my listener out there who might have trouble talking to other people. You and I just met today.
Yeah.
We just had this organic conversation about some kind of touchy subjects, which we could get touchier about, but we kept it real. And I want you to know that you can keep it real too. When you talk to other people, you don't 100%. Have to get upset. Just hear them out.
If I can do it, anyone can do it. Seriously.
Same. Okay. All day on this podcast, I tell you, I got all sorts of different colorful people. And so I just want my listener to know you can live in this world that we live in today, and you can spread kindness because it's contagious.
Amen.
Okay. All right. Now, on behalf of Seth and myself, former retired Colonel.
No, Seth. I only go by
Krummrich.
Seth now.
Okay, I do,
Corporate
Seth.
life.
I just want to say thanks for being on SOFREP and letting my listener listen and view us. And to Ben, who hooked all this up on the back end. Ben, I'll always reach out to you if I can get the Colonel back on to,
Anytime.
have you talk some more with us. Okay. So with that said, on behalf of Brandon Webb, who is my main man who runs this website, Navy SEAL sniper instructor extraordinaire, author, love him. And to Anton, who's going to edit this for us, and to everybody on the back end, thank you so much, Chris and Martin, everybody out there that's helping. I also want to shout out my new website that I'm running with SOFREP, which is called theloadoutroom.com. You can go check out all the gear updates, all the reviews of me snowboarding and people shooting the SIGs and all these different types of cool things that are a loadout in a lane of like, it could be bowling. What do you wear when you go bowling? So the loadout. So go check out Loadout Room. And again, thanks to Seth for being here. And I'm going to say this is Rad saying peace.
You've been listening to SOFREP Radio.